This is going to be a really power-packed session. We've got a lot to cover, so I am going to be running through this really quickly for you. Confirming that everybody can see the PowerPoint that says ChatGPT for client communications on the screen. Just type a quick yes into the chat. I don't want to make sure we're not flying blind here. Now, some of you have already met me in Brisbane at the conference last year. I believe it was November, feels like a long time ago now. For those of you who are new to me, I'm a marketing consultant for the accounting industry. I help firms across Australia and New Zealand implement growth strategies in their firm, primarily through AI-powered marketing and communication strategies, as well as training, coaching, and strategic overviews for firms. So that's a little bit about me. I do have a background in very high-scale growth with large advisory networks. But also, a lot of the firms that I work with are also much smaller, with 10 employees or less. So, what I am sharing for you is a little bit of a taste of what we are doing with firms behind the scenes to create results. Now, this is not a session where we're going to be learning all the things about AI. Obviously, that's going to take more than one session. But the key purpose of this session is to give you some insight into frameworks for your firm and to really consider practical use cases. So, obviously, there's a lot of people hyping up AI, on almost every webinar that you attend these days. However, I guess unless you're using it for meaningful and practical purposes behind the scenes in your firm, then it's just noise, right? It's just another thing. So, we're going to be just diving into a few very tactical examples and use cases. And this session is really a recap of what I shared in Brisbane for some of the partners and directors of your firms. It was a slightly longer session, so we are cramming in a bit of a recap for you in this session so that you don't all miss out on the fun. Now, before we get started, just type into the chat somewhere between a 1 to a 5 being your current capability for you personally. Don't worry about the whole firm. Just for you personally, your experience and use of ChatGPT. So 0 being you've never used it, 1 being you've dabbled a little bit and had a bit of a go, 5 being you're a pro and you could probably be running this session. Okay, so let's just get a gauge for everyone's sitting at. We've got quite a few twos, a 5. Karen, we can swap places. And a whole gamut, right? And a few people ones, twos, threes, a lot of people sort of solidly sitting in the middle. And one of the things that we're going to cover in this session is how we can take individual expertise or experience utilizing ChatGPT or other forms of AI and actually embed those as capabilities across your firm. Because it's not really about any individual expertise, it's how fast the whole firm is embodying and putting these tools into practice. All right, thanks everyone for being interactive and playing along. It gives me a good lens. Now, of course, it'd be remiss of me not to, just briefly cover the risks of using AI in your firm and in particular tools like ChatGPT or other readily accessible AI tools. So obviously, we all know that AI can hallucinate. Not all of the information that comes out of AI is in fact correct. You should treat it as a junior on your team, that everything needs to be thoroughly reviewed and approved before use. Obviously, there's a huge, risk scenario around your sensitive client data. We're not going to be diving into that specifically today, and the reason being is that we are going to focus this lens on communication, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in the moment. But it's a very real risk and something that your firm needs to have an AI usage policy around for your team and be really clear around some of the legalities and also, where you stand in your firm, particularly in relation to the the tools that you're using. Now, that's all the doom and gloom, right? But on the flip side, there are risks of not using AI in your firm and certainly not being proficient in using an AI and developing capability. So let's just type into the chat. We're all aware of the risks of using AI, but what are the risks to your firm of not using or adopting AI and embedding it within your efficiencies and creating outcomes in your firm? So go ahead and type into the chat some of the risks of not adopting AI, because I think, there's both sides of that same coin. All right, so falling behind, absolutely. Wasted efficiency, definitely falling behind other firms using AI. So there's a lot of people sort of bandying around that sort of slogan. AI won't replace accountants, but accountants who use AI will. And perhaps, that's looking at an individual level, but certainly at the firm level, what we are seeing, and I'm seeing across the board, I have clients and accounting firms I've worked with both in New Zealand and Australia. Smaller firms that are adopting AI are radically outpacing and outperforming larger firms with more resources and teams, and they're able to scale and grow much faster or up level sort of those profit margins and through efficiencies and also innovation in their firm. All right, yes, miss the opportunity to deliver highly profitable work in the early days. That is so true. Not creating time to serve our clients better, left behind. Clients expect it. That's a really interesting one. And it's actually very true. So yes, so there's some really high risks, and I would say the opportunity cost of not adopting AI is actually far greater than the cost of adopting AI. And we are going to dive into ChatGPT as a tool on this session. But what I'm going to be sharing with you are actually strategic frameworks that can be applied to any AI tool. And many of your firms will be using Copilot embedded within the suite of tools that you use in your firm. So most of these learnings are equally transferable. And also there are other tools available on the market, which we'll chat about a little bit. One of the reasons that I think ChatGPT can be a great tool to have a play around with in your firm is that you can use ChatGPT without having to have it integrated across the rest of your suite of tools that you're using in your firm, which is one of the risks of access to data through, for example, like Copilot. One of the reasons in this session, we're going to be talking about creating compelling client communications and promotions for your firm is because this is one of the least risky areas when it comes to deploying AI strategies in your firm and getting everyone on board because in most cases, you don't need to use any sensitive client data. So you don't, for this purpose, need to worry about that level of risk. And it's very low cost, obviously, subscriptions, but more importantly, at this stage in the game, it's not so much about mastery of any particular AI tool. It's about capability building for being able to dive in and get to grips with and use and also maximize any AI tool that your firm use. And let's be honest, there's going to be so many new tools and innovations coming out, and they are all the time. So it's really just a learned skill of learning and adopting AI. Within ChatGPT itself, there is a whole GPT network. So many of you will be using Xero as an accounting software with your clients, and you'll be quite familiar that within the Xero ecosystem, there's all sorts of vendor apps and plugins and other softwares that all natively integrate with Xero. So ChatGPT has created a framework which is very similar. So other developers have created GPTs within the ChatGPT ecosystem where you can do other applications, which is pretty cool. Just wanted to share the possibilities with you. Copilot, you can develop your own GPTs. Typically, this is at an enterprise level. And some of the larger firms that I work with have developed their own custom solutions within the Copilot ecosystem. But that takes a significant amount of time and investment. Let me know if any of you currently have created custom G or custom integrations within the Copilot system or framework that you're using in your firm, or if you just use the standard features. And that's a really good point in the chat. There are so many GPTs that it's hard to know which ones are worth using. And certainly I can speak to that. Myself and my team invest a significant amount of time each week and dedicated blocks each month for trialing out AI tools. And I will concur, a lot of them are a waste of time and are not quite there yet. And this is why I always recommend working backwards from the use case that you are looking to achieve in your firm and then finding the right tool. And then one of the benefits of being part of a firm network like you're part of through NZCA is that you can share these ideas and certainly start with sharing within your firm. So, a framework that I shared for the partners and directors in Brisbane and that I will share with you today is how we focus on building capabilities within the firm in relation to AI, but obviously this is actually a framework you can use for almost any new innovation or adoption. So level one is individual proficiency. So earlier on this session, when you typed in a number between 1 to 5 in terms of your own personal proficiency and experience using a tool like ChatGPT, that's where you're sitting at the individual level. Some of you in your firms have a handful of individuals that are actually very savvy, really using AI, and have a wealth of knowledge. Some of you then in your firms also have other individuals who are just at the starting point because they've just been so swamped with their workload that they haven't had any time or they haven't had the right training to help them along this journey. So individual expertise or individual proficiency is important, but really what's more important is as we move up to level two, which is about team capability. So this is where you have shared learnings in your teams. The larger your firm is, then your teams may in fact be siloed into different departments or areas. And what you'll find is the larger the firm, sometimes the harder communication between teams becomes, right? That's not unique to anyone here on this session. So building capabilities really is about team capability so that you're maximizing efficiency. So if one person has figured out a great solution or hack for something, it's shared across the teams and you're doing it in a unified way rather than every person doing it in their own way and creating different results. So at a firm level, in terms of building capabilities, this is when we embed efficiencies firm-wide so that key learnings are systematized and then rolled out and deployed in, a very reliable sort of framework. And obviously, this is something that is regularly updated as you go with all the developments in AI tools and what's happening in the landscape. And then I think an amazing opportunity you all have here as part of the network is that you have collective leverage across all of your firms. So you might find that a couple of firms have really dialed into certain capabilities within AI tools. Then how is that shared across the group? So easy example. Most of your firms will have some type of practice manager. Say hello if that's you, right? So there's certain processes and systems and certainly communications that those roles do on a regular basis that will be similar across all of the firms in the network. So learnings can be shared at a role level also across the network. So the point of this session today is to start the journey of building capabilities, moving from that individual team to firm to network level, because that's where the real profit up-leveling is. That's where better satisfaction comes from because we're not engaging in redundancies in workload and tasks or things that are really stressful. So, for example, communications typically is not the favorite subject for many accountants. Your numbers people, very, very good at the analytics, the data reporting, but communicating your value or responding to difficult situations, etc. These are things where we can lean into AI capabilities to help your success. Now, really, when we look at this at the individual level, we've got training and tactics. Communication frameworks is really what moves you from level 1 to level 2. Formalized systems is what helps your firm move from level 2 to level 3. And then priority working groups across your firm network is really what creates efficiencies at a larger scale. So I'd love to see in the chat where you think the capabilities are sitting in your firm at the moment. So not necessarily you as an individual, but where they're sitting in your firm, level 1, 2, 3. Potentially level 4, but I think that's why we're having this session, right, is to help drive that. So we've got a lot of ones coming through, and that is very, very normal because we're all super busy, right? So communication frameworks need to be, driven and installed by champions in the team. All right, so we've got a few 1 and 2s, 2.5. So that's pretty good. It's a great start, and it's just about making sure we continue to keep pushing that forward. Now, we're going to take a little breather in terms of having a look at some of the ideas and ways that we can use ChatGPT within the firm to make not only the life of your team members easier, but also to facilitate much better outcomes with clients and also positioning more services to your current clients within your firm, as well as being more attractive to new clients. So here's just an easy snapshot, an example of different ways that we can utilize ChatGPT and other AI tools to facilitate particular outcomes in our firm. Now, when we were in Brisbane, we did this as a group exercise with everyone on their tables, sharing what their score was. So obviously, we're all dialing in today. If you are dialing into this webinar and you are sitting around a boardroom and you're dialed in with your team together, you might want to share your answers. So there are 20 examples here for using ChatGPT and developing capabilities. You want to think about sort of a score out of 20 for where your firm, so it's not you individually necessarily, but where your firm sits in terms of utilizing these capabilities to create some of these example outcomes in your firm. So you want to think about where you sit as sort of a score out of 20. If you're game, you're welcome to pop your answer in the chat. If my memory serves me correctly, when we were in Brisbane, we had sort of responses ranging from sort of 5 to 6 through to about 10 for some of the firms. And I think there was one firm that scored a bit higher. They were developing things. And then there is I guess, the distinction between doing some of these things as a one-off. So you've tried it once, it worked well, and then having a consistent rhythm for rollout within your firm. Now, many of you know that implementation and execution is typically when ideas fall down because everyone's busy, right? I've never met an accounting firm that wasn't busy or wasn't over capacity. So that's just the norm, right? And the key to rolling some of these out is through embedded systems and obviously the right support. So We're not, this isn't a witch hunt to see what you are or aren't doing in your firm. This is just to help unlock the doors of possibility for what your firm can be doing, because certainly many of you in your firms don't necessarily need more clients. Some of you just want to be working with a better caliber of client or positioning more of your services at a higher level. Some of you who have stagnated and maybe want to be in growth mode then can certainly use these tools to become more attractive to clients in the market. And what I will say is everything that is attractive to a better caliber of client is also attractive to a better caliber of candidate. So if some of your firms are recruiting in the market, we all know there's a crazy talent shortage. Having a firm that looks up to date, modern, utilizing modern tools is also now really attractive to top talent. So you can kind of achieve those two outcomes in the same process, if that makes sense. And so, for example, here I have general communications, a note about client welcome pack. We also now help firms develop EVP, so employee value proposition packs, which are very compelling using AI tools to help with that process. All right. So that's an inclination of what we covered. Here's a visual of what this looks like in action. So this is an example that I shared of a firm that's worked with us and has steadily implemented some of those capabilities that you saw on the previous slide. So here, for example, you can see social media, newsletter, ebook, checklist. Now, this firm is based in Rockhampton in Australia, and for context, I would say that that would probably be very similar to um, let's say, a Waimate firm in the South Island in New Zealand. So small regional area with a large primary producer style client base. Um, and previously, this firm, looked very dowdy, behind the times. They sort of zhuzhed up their image and their communications, so to speak, have entered radical growth mode, and the partner of the firm actually, as a result of all of this, was able to successfully buy out some other equity partners because of the momentum. So this just shows you what things can look like in the market, and you can see that this is fresh, this is fun, and you've got to remember your clients, particularly if they're business owners, are also being marketed to by who? Not just other accounting firms. Business coaches, consultants, all manner of gurus on the internet, and they are all extremely good marketers and communicators, maybe not so good at delivery, but that's the benchmark that's being set in the industry. All right, so there are desktop and mobile versions of ChatGPT. And what some of you may have already explored is that there are voice capability options. So, for example, on my phone, if I speak into my ChatGPT app, I can back and forth, and then I can also access that conversation later when I'm at my computer. So it's a good one for talking out ideas, thought leadership, taking notes, or if you struggle to sometimes articulate actually what you're wanting to communicate out of the tool, voice prompts is a really hot tip that I would recommend. When we do stuff in person or in a training session, we do live demos of this. But for now, we're going to talk about how you can create a strategic framework for within any AI tool, including how you operate within certain aspects of Copilot in your system, for how you can get the best outcomes for anything you're using. So, the very first point of call is to identify a use case. So, what is the outcome you are wanting to achieve in your firm? Now, there are things that require AI agents and very, very sophisticated processes to achieve. So, in terms of actual full task functionality, Today, we're just looking at communication frameworks and client engagement. So we want to identify a use case. Then we work backwards for how we prime the AI tool we're using, how we prompt, review processes, then how we standardize so we can share that knowledge across the firm, and then iterate. If we have a framework like this for adopting AI tools in your firm, you'll find that it doesn't matter what use case you're embarking on or what tool you're using, you have a rhythm to follow and that everyone can follow in the firm. And I'm going to run you through what this sort of looks like now, because this is how we start moving up from level 1 to level 2 or level 3 in terms of capabilities in your firm. And hopefully, for those of you who are rejoining this session live today, who were also in Brisbane, this is like a pop quiz homework reminder to see how much you can remember. So priming your AI tool is really about incorporating your firm's brand persona into the platform so that outputs are relevant and also contextualized for your firm. So it's not just brand persona in terms of branding colors and things like that, but it's also related to your location, the type of client base that you have, the type of services that you offer, and any nuances or specifics relative to or related to your firm, your niche, or do's or don'ts. Some of you will have a slightly more corporate and formal approach in the market with your client base, and some of you might be a bit edgier, trendier style firms. It works for both, but what you don't want is the AI tool that you're using to be repeatedly giving you outputs that aren't aligned or aren't authentic for your firm. And many of you will have experienced this if you've used ChatGPT, or even if the back end of your firm level Copilot hasn't really been set up. You will have noticed this already. So go ahead and type into the chat if you've had some garbage outputs from ChatGPT or messages and communications and frameworks that you would not be happy to have your name behind going out into market. So just type in yes if you've had that experience, and then the way to overcome those sort of experiences is to prime your AI tool. And I'm going to share a screenshot of what that looks like for ChatGPT in the background. And then on the other hand, the more detailed your prompt is, the better the output you will get. As you will know, when it comes to finances and data, garbage in equals garbage out. It's very similar with the AI tool. So prompting is when you have a detailed prompt, so that's your instructions and references, to increase the probability of an outcome that is helpful and worth using in your firm. It's worth noting that you can prime your AI tool at a firm level in many cases, but then sometimes you will still need to do contextualized priming within your individual use and your prompts. And then you can also develop what I call prompt playbooks for regular repeated tasks in your firm that everybody can copy and paste and use. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Once we find something that works well, we repeat. All right. As I said earlier, we always review AI generated material for technical accuracy. Obviously, this is really important. You won't be giving quote unquote financial advice out into the market, but you definitely want to make sure that it is accurate in terms of accounting information. Review the tone and fit for purpose. And I always say apply common sense at all times. Treat your AI tools as junior team members. Even if the information that the AI tool is sourcing is quite detailed or specific, you should still treat it as a junior that needs to be reviewed. All right, and here's the point that we're really going to help your firms shine with is standardizing and sharing. So creating best practice guidelines for use and internal SOPs, so standard operating procedures for your regularly performed tasks and communications. As I said, communications is an easy one to start with. And then you can take the same framework to adopt into more perhaps sophisticated or very, very accounting, detailed, specific to certain roles or elements. Take a similar process to use for there. And then obviously iterate. So it's not a one and done, set and forget scenario here. AI tools, there's a new tool coming out every single day, thousands of them. There's probably, I would say, maybe millions by now, compared to when ChatGPT first launched onto the scene a number of years ago. So it's just about iterating and to continue improving. All right. And so here's a quick screenshot of what I mean by customizing your software. So here's a screenshot from the back end of ChatGPT where there is an option to customize your ChatGPT. And there's different versions of ChatGPT. So free, pro, business level. But they all have options to customize. And so you want to think about your firm's brand personality, your tone of voice, like I said, your ideal client. So if you primarily have farming clients or primary producers as the kind of bread and butter clients of your firm, then you don't want to be speaking in a very corporate tone or using examples or references that aren't relevant, and vice versa if you're a metro firm in the middle of the city. If you offer or have a certain specialization around key service areas, then that will be a focus. You can also guide your, for example, ChatGPT not to use uh, M dashes. Who's familiar with an M dash? You can definitely use M dashes. They've been around in beautiful prose and literature and great copywriting for a long time. However, what you don't want is your chat GPT using 10 M dashes in one paragraph, right? It's very chat GPT. You might have encountered this. One of the reasons why it's important for your team to experiment and play around, even just with ChatGPT outside of also Copilot frameworks, is that this is one of the tools that many of your clients use the most frequently. And it's really important to have an understanding of how your clients are engaging with this tool because no doubt you've already had, and type a yes in the chat if you've already had clients coming to you asking you questions or to verify information that they have been exploring within ChatGPT about accounting. Or you can tell that their emails or their communications have just been crafted using a tool like this. And the reality is that this is going to continue happening more and more and more. And instead of fighting it, we just want to make sure that your teams are just as AI literate as your clients, because otherwise the disconnect grows too far, right? I've heard it, my county firms that I work with have told me this is starting to happen more and more and more. And it's really about how you frame and manage it in your firm. So, prompt engineering is the practice of designing inputs for AI tools that will produce optimal outputs. Great quote. I didn't make that one up. Obviously, comes from McKinsey. So here's a best practice framework that I use, and a number of sort of AI experts across the world that we sort of learn from, recommend, and suggest. And you want to think about the role of the AI tool, the role the AI tool is performing, the context, the actual specific task, the end format you want, a reference example if you have one, and then you can always prompt for improvement. So we covered this framework in our session in Brisbane, and when you see it laid out like this, it makes sense. How do you then, and I should note, by the way, everyone, that I will send these slides to you along with the recording link so that you have it for your future reference. But how does this look in practice? Okay, so it's when we're looking at weak versus strong prompts. So a weak prompt might be write an end of financial year planner for clients. A stronger or refined prompt might be acting as an advisor, so that's the role, Create an end of financial year planning checklist. So that's the task, but also the actual output. So checklist is what we want. For our firm's clients that are small business owners, that's some context, focusing on financial record keeping, best practice business strategies, and tax planning tips. Use our firm's brand guidelines in the attached document as a reference. So if you have already in your firm in the past invested in collateral or making resources for your clients, you can actually shortcut the whole process now moving forward by having your AI tools use your previous best practice as a source reference. So you can copy and paste or upload reference examples into your AI tool. And that means that any of your brand tone, so any materials that you've already spent the time, energy, and effort into making sure represent and reflect your firm's brand, are not going to a waste. We are now getting a better ROI and leverage from those. There are also separate tools that sit as GPTs inside ChatGPT, and then also completely separate tools that can help you craft very specific narratives for your firm. We're not going to be worried about that too much now. A hot tip for you is if you use voice to text tools in ChatGPT or recordings of your webinars or your meetings, then your AI tools can use your own language as the reference. All right, here's just a screenshot example of a ChatGPT easy little use case for social media. It's too hard on Zoom to switch into ChatGPT and do a live demonstration. So this is just one that I recorded for you earlier. So acting as a social media manager at an accounting firm, create a social media caption for this post and uploading the actual post as a reference, assuming you already had one. That is a very simple and basic prompt. Using the framework that we shared, you could be a lot more detailed. And you can see that ChatGPT has created an example caption here. Now, using the strategic framework we shared earlier around improving and iterating, I wasn't happy with that caption. So I have created an additional prompt to up-level the output here. So this is a social media caption example, right? Because we all see social media online, so it's very easy to understand. However, the same approach applies for any form of communication, marketing, promotional material, client service agreements, and engagements. So can everyone see the difference there in a before and after, and just how easy that is? But can you also see how easy it is using any tool for different people to create different outcomes or try to be achieving the same use case but getting pretty different results, right? And if I type something into my ChatGPT that has been set up and primed for my writing style, I'll have a different outcome in terms of the tone and sensibility than perhaps you will in your firm if you have primed it a different way. All right, so that's a very basic example. If you're brand new to ChatGPT, then that's probably going to be like, wow, that's so easy. If you've been using tools for a while, this will seem, fairly standard for you. Bear in mind, though, that this is just one prompt for one outcome, but you can do this en masse. So, for example, I might have had 20 posts that I'm all doing at once, or I might have been doing my calendar for the entire year, right? This is where the efficiencies come in. And also, this is where more nimble firms are outpacing, certainly from a market-facing perspective, which translates then into revenue and fees, what's possible, right? You can then use AI tools. So ChatGPT is very good for communications, and there are other tools, for example, like Canva for design, where you can have amazing consistency across your brand rolled out really quickly so that you have communications happening in a rhythm that makes sense for the promotional schedule for your firm. So, for example, at tax planning time, you would have social media posts harmonizing with newsletter content, real life conversations that are happening with your client, internal communications, etc., all happening on the same theme. And like I mentioned before, you can repurpose existing collateral. So I think this is one of the easiest quick wins that you can do. And also, if you have information sharing across some of the firms in your network, I'm not talking about client information, I just mean some of your best practice information sharing across firms. A resource that one firm has developed can be shared with another firm, and then you can put your firm's style, personality, and nuance differences to that resource. Is that something that you have been doing currently across your firm network? Just type in a yes or a no. Huge, huge opportunities and efficiencies there. Um, yeah, so definitely there's an opportunity there. So if you think about the applications, again, like I said, I'm using easy examples here, but you can see that this gets real really quickly, right? Client onboarding, client welcome sequences, client upsell sequences. Um, it's almost endless. And as well, you can create really cheeky, fun brand personas that align with specific promotions or anything that you're doing. The better your promotions are, the less reliance you have on individual team members to be also driving certain results within your firm. So you can create tone of voice or guidelines for your firm that you have created that then you just upload each time you're doing a particular prompt. Now, Copilot in particular, you will often have to do priming and prompting within one area. It won't natively store such a depth of background about your firm behind the scenes. So it's really, really helpful if you have references, so prompt playbooks, and also example source documents that you can copy and paste into your prompts as you go. Is an example of a firm in Christchurch actually that has a really cheeky rugby focused brand. They're very out there. They're not a traditional firm. And so they have used, for example, ChatGPT to rewrite all of the resources that they previously had access to through various libraries. Content libraries that they had purchased in their firm to go and make them more on brand for their firm and have a rugby and sport and achievement performance orientated theme. Immediate standout and cut through in the market. Here's an example of a firm based in Brisbane. This is an example of a young, edgy firm that they have grown by 100% over the last 18 months. And in fees and in terms of team growth, it has been much more than 100% to support that. This is an example of some of the collateral and communications and material that they are pumping out all on brand very regularly. And so this is now becoming the standard and the norm in the market, and obviously huge opportunity for all of your firms to be doing that as well. Some of you will know you've done a couple of things or you've done them really well, but it's the consistency that creates momentum. And I love sharing visual examples of what's possible because it's only when you kind of see it come to life that it makes sense, right? Another key way that you can be using these tools to up level what you're doing is starting the journey of productizing your advisory or utilizing the thought leadership that you already have within your firm to be making a bigger impact. And what I mean by that is very likely you have some senior people in your team or partners or directors who do a lot of really high level work with clients, and it's amazing, but it's not really being shared or transferred as knowledge within the firm, or it's not really being used to communicate then the value of what's happening inside the firm to the wider market, to potential new clients, or even to some of your existing clients who don't know that that's what you offer or what you do. The very common scenario for clients to leave firms because they're not actually aware of all of the good results that you are creating behind the scenes. So you can actually use AI transcripts for client meetings or in-house training sessions. You can then use tools like ChatGPT to take transcripts and develop market-facing or client-facing resources. And like we said earlier, you always review the material of what's being created. However, it means that you don't have to start from a blank slate. It also means that, as an example, when you collaborate with agencies or marketing providers, they can take your content and then leverage that into marketing material with less involvement from you and a better outcome that represents you. I personally think that if you're not using AI recording tools for your meetings, it's a missed opportunity because you're banking up that IP and that knowledge. There are some considerations with recording client meetings. We're not going to go into that today. There definitely are considerations to be aware of. Actually, more so from your clients using AI tools to record your meetings as opposed to you using them to record your meetings. However, also your internal sessions can be used. So this is a really, really great way to be transferring knowledge and bringing the team along for the journey and the ride. Is anyone already in their firm using AI transcripts for meetings or client-facing sessions or training sessions, and then taking the recording and developing something that creates leverage for your firm? So a yes and a yes. So doing the recording, but then taking the recording to create something that creates a leverage for your firm, leveraging time by training other team members, leveraging your opportunity in the market through taking obviously non-confidential aspects to create communications and share value. So, yeah, so a lot of people are saying yes and no. So, first part is amazing. You've got the recordings there. And then how do we leverage them? Because I feel that some of the biggest opportunities with AI is actually creating leverage and what you would call return on investment from your own internal time and IP. So, wow. And it does depend on your client base. Obviously, I think there are really edgy client bases that are really on the virtual train, and then some not so much. And that's okay. And there are also workarounds for you in relation to that. But again, that's why systems and processes are important so you know what's happening across what your teams are doing in your firm. I love it. So lots of opportunity. I would love to hear a few insights from you on the session around what's come up for you or what's coming up top of mind for you as opportunities that you can take advantage of with AI tools, either at an individual level, what you're working on in your firm, or the opportunity you see for the broader team or firm opportunity, obviously depending on your role. I'd love to hear a few insights because everyone who's joining this session is at different levels. And when we delivered this session live in Brisbane, we had a lot of time for discussion at the tables, which is really valuable. So let's just take a minute now, and I'm going to invite everyone who's on here now because this is part of, capitalizing on what you learn is to think about what's a real aha or an insight for you. Don't be shy, pop those in the chat. in terms of how you can be using AI, these AI tools for yourself and your role, or the opportunity at the firm level. So go ahead and type in what you are thinking. For some of you, you just be like, we just need to get started. For some of you, like, we've been doing some of the things, but not consistently. And for some of you, it's just about momentum and capability building. So it's about turning those ideas into action. Now, obviously, one of the reasons for me running this webinar for all of you to recap some of the insights and the learnings that we shared live last year is to bring everyone in the team along for the ride. And I have already shared with many of you the opportunity that we can do to take next steps together as a group and at a firm level. Yes, okay, perfect. So, because what we want to do is to help drive capability up the chain in terms of team and firm level. And sometimes it's as simple as systematizing and sharing and communicating some of the things that are already been doing well. All right, so this is our goal for you. And next steps for you. So, for the firm network, I have previously shared with you, and I will share the link for you together with the replay of this session so you can share with your teams who missed it. The opportunity to participate in a 4-week challenge together with me. So, this is a very tactical, hands on challenge for firms to get you rocking and rolling. Um, and there's also opportunities, which we won't really go into now, where I do done for you AI powered marketing and communication specific to your firm, that my teams. And yeah, it's a really great point, Darren. It feels like there is a lot of focus on tools rather than the outcomes people, firms are looking for. The noise is deafening and distracting in equal measures. I would completely agree with that. So it's impossible now to almost go to any industry event or where everyone's just talking about AI, but you're right, it's all about the tools. It's not really about the people. That's something I'm super passionate about because ultimately there'll always be new tools, right? And it's the same in terms of your accounting software. There's always new tools, but how are the people in your firm using the tools? How is everyone coming along for the ride together? It's not really just about, a partner trying to lead change. It's actually about the firms we see really winning and succeeding have created a culture of adoption in the firm and also distilling it down to just a couple of use cases to get started and get everyone on the same page, as opposed to trying to do all the things all at once. Even for the people I know that work full time in AI and are very passionate about this, it is still overwhelming for them. Uh, and yeah, I love this. So, being able and Insights being able to easily adopt a social media presence and consistency with your current branding utilizing AI. Absolutely. So it's about choosing a few use cases and getting started and then moving from there. If we think we need to be perfect from day one, or we should be at a certain position from day one, or exploring very, very advanced strategies. It doesn't really matter if you're not doing the basics because the basics is where usually the easiest opportunities lie. And also, that's the foundations of your firm. So, I'm going to very quickly, just for 2 minutes now, share with you a little bit more details about the ChatGPT challenge. It's available for firms in the NZCA network. If you would like to embark around a journey of bringing your team along for the ride, and to do so, tackling a very easy, non-confrontational topic that doesn't require diving into the weeds of the accounting nuances and specifics and integrations with other accounting software that you're using. That usually requires a much bigger process, and it's usually best when people have had more of an experience of quick wins along the way. So, if it's of interest, I'd love to invite your firm to join us for a 4-week challenge. Short, sweet, and very practical, right? So this isn't going to be learning more theory. I've covered some of the frameworks and the theory in this session. What we're actually just going to be looking at is using the tools for some particular case studies or practical use cases for your firm and creating outcomes straight away and creating a communication framework and playbooks related to those use cases that can be adopted. From there, obviously, you can go on to implement and execute related to other areas of AI. This is just a nice, fun way to get started without what I call a great expression, trying to boil the ocean to make a cup of tea, right? This is the opposite. We are just going to lean in to a couple of areas, but bring your whole team along for the ride just to explore and engage. So even if there might be some members of your firm who may not be in charge of, certain aspects of communications, the reality is everyone, regardless of their role, uses some form of communication and certainly can just be involved together in learning how the tools work so that then they can adopt that level of confidence or momentum into other areas of the firm. So basically, how I run these challenges are just on a weekly cadence where we have a training session, which is just very tactical. So it's not about endless theory, it's just tactical related to identifying a use case for your firm and then followed by a very quick regroup and accountability session so that there's time just to invest a very short 30-minute window in implementation and execution within the firm so that we move quickly with intense energy and focus rather than a big long drawn out process that everyone's lost interest in. So it's short and sweet. And how we start is just with an executive briefing. So that's just with the partners or directors of the firm, just to quickly ensure we have an AI policy in place for the challenge period and select who on the team you want to join the challenge. The pricing is per firm, not per individual joining, with the whole goal that you have as many people in the firm as possible joining so that you can foster AI adoption from the ground up, not having it come from the top down. That's where we see all of the wins happening. And then to make it easy, I include actual templates and examples so that you can plug into your tools. And that's a really great point. So one of the things that we talked about in Brisbane was helping identify AI champions within your firm. And this challenge will help people see who's most interested, and then they can help embed these learnings across your firm. So what's usually recommended for most firms on their adoption journey is, depending on the size of the firm, they have one or a number of AI champions within the firm. These are the people that are most interested and passionate, who are then supported with the right training and guidance to help bring these learnings across the rest of the firm. But they need frameworks and they need support to get started. And we all need to start somewhere. And you certainly can't be expecting anyone on your team who's not you or is not a partner or a director to be driving this for you without some impetus and momentum. Here's how we run the sessions. So we're keeping it really simple around use cases. This is also in the collateral that I have sent out and will resend, so we won't necessarily spend a lot of time on here. The important thing is that it's tactical. So focus on bite-sized execution within your firm and giving the opportunity for those in your firm who are a little bit more advanced in their journey to support and engage with other members of the firm. That's usually a step that's really missing in the technology adoption process. Timing, I have included this in a brochure. There's two options, February intake and an April intake. Obviously, I know you have end of financial year for you, end of March, which is obviously different in Australia. So timing may be a factor for you. All those dates will be in the collateral, so I'm not going to go over that now. How it works is, like I said, it's a price per firm. It's a very discounted price for your network. This is not what I sell it at here in Australia. And the individuals in your firm that participate in the challenge will receive a certificate of completion and CPD log. Obviously, it only relates to one area of CPD, that being communications and AI. You've got time to make a decision and secure your firm's participation in the challenge. I will email the replay link to this webinar recording as well as all of those details for you so that you've got the opportunity to consider it. I guess my invitation for you is everyone always asks me, how do we get started? How do we implement these? And this is how, by making it really easy and allowing your team to be the leaders and the drivers and your team to have an opportunity to shine, as opposed to this being, technology that you're trying to implement from the top down, because that's the least fun way for all involved to go about it. Now, I have a few more minutes here. We are bang on time now. If anyone wants to ask any questions, I'm happy to stay on the line. If you have to jump into another meeting that you have scheduled now, that is totally fine as well. So I really thank you for taking the time to join me today. I know that when I met a lot of you in person in Brisbane, you were definitely one of the more fun accounting firm networks that I have trained and been with. So I am really looking forward to supporting the next step of your journey. I think you're a very cool crew. So if there's any questions, go ahead and type them in. Otherwise, I look forward to connecting with you individually in relation to the challenge and getting the party started, really, for AI adoption and AI champions across the NZCA firm network. So thank you, everyone. Much appreciated for having you join me. See you. Thank you. Oh, thanks, everyone. Cheers.